Today we are back with the e-invoicing discussion. In this session, we'll talk about the 50 mandatory requirements that the e-invoicing public consultation document has mentioned for the standard tax invoice use case. First on, we will discuss about the 9 requirements about the invoice details that form the basic part of the standard tax invoice. The first item on the list is the invoice number. Every invoice must have an invoice number. The invoice number can be prefixed with a sequence or any other identifier so that it can be used to identify the different type of invoice transaction types as well. The second item on the list is as intuitive as the first one, that mentions the invoice issue date. This is the date when the invoice was issued. The next item on the list is the invoice transaction type code. The invoice transaction type code basically segregates the different types of invoices that a business may raise. Examples could be free zone supplies, continuous supplies, deemed supplies, margin scheme supplies, supplies through e-commerce, disclosed agent billing, and all such different types of supplies. Now the invoice type codes would require businesses to map their different business scenarios within the business as of now, and be ready for having those different types of codes for those invoices to be prepared for the e-invoicing transition. The next mandatory item or data field on every invoice is the invoice currency code. The invoice currency code is nothing but a 3-letter standardized code issued by the ISO. Next up, we discuss about the invoice type code. The invoice type code is defined as the functional type of the invoice. It can include examples such as the commercial invoice, the tax invoice, the VAT invoice, a credit note, self-billing. All these are examples of invoice type codes. The standard for the invoice type codes has been specified in the UNTDID list, which is published and which has codes assigned for each of these document types. As an example, the code 380 specifies commercial invoice under the UNTDID specification. The next field that we discuss about is business process type. Business process type is basically the context within which the transaction is happening within the business framework. So in the UAE right now, it is only the billing and the invoicing framework which is going ahead with the e-invoicing. So this particular data field will always have a static value which will be specified by the e-invoicing authorities, and that will be forming part in a static way for this particular data field across all e-invoices that are issued and received. The next field that we talk about today is the payment due date, which needs to be captured as a mandatory data field. The payment due date, however, needs to be captured whenever the amount due is not equal to 0. So a typical example would be a credit sale where the amount has not been paid at the time of sale or in advance. Now we talk about IBT 081, the payment means type code. The payment means type code is basically a codification of how the payment is expected to be received against a particular invoice. So there's a standard codification which applies to all those payment types. Last business term that we're discussing today is the specification identifier. The specification identifier is again a static term, a static field or a static value which will be given by the e-invoicing authorities. The specification identifier serves the purpose of giving a version number or sets a technical standard to which the e-invoicing framework within the country should apply, so that it's kind of a standardized format which says that, okay, if version 1 is the e-invoicing framework or invoicing standard that is working within the UAE right now, it should be version 1 across all businesses. In the next video, we will talk about the seller details part of the data fields that are required in a standard tax invoice. There are 10 fields that have been specified in the public consultation document as mandatory for the seller details in the standard tax invoice. Stay tuned and let us know if you have any questions or any queries around this. We'll be happy to take those up and continue our learning journey on e-invoicing with you. Thank you.